Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I am Vishal Joshi, and I am working on trying to ease the ASP.NET deployment pains. And I was looking around, people looking at their sites and stuff like that. Hopefully, you're not deploying right now, because if you deploy after 1 hour, it will be much better. But anyways, I wanted to firstly let you know that a lot of people across Microsoft had realized that this was really a big painful point. We got together with a lot of teams, IIS, ASP.NET, Visual Studio, SQL to an extent, and with a lot of consulting, what we have today is in front of you. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and this is just my humble attempt to represent all the people out there in Redmond and over here who have worked really hard to get this together. So with that, let us get started. So we are here today to first gaze into the future of web deployment. Hopefully it's going to be bright and much different. Second, packaging web applications. We want to introduce a concept in which you can go ahead and package web applications as in literally a package. Then we are going to go ahead and talk about preparing your web config files for prime time. How many of you guys were there in the keynote today morning? So what you saw over there is what we are going to go into detail around today, because I believe that Scott Guthrie did a presentation around this particular thing. Do you guys recall that? Okay, so you know the problem statement. That's what we are going to talk about. Unfortunately, I was not able to go because I wanted to prepare for demos for you guys. And they were really failing till today morning, but I'm hoping that now they will work. So then we will talk about sharing web applications with peers and community, which we have not been able to do very easily in ASP.NET world. So we are hoping that after this, it would be really possible, and we'll try to demonstrate that. And next is to enable continuous integration for web applications. So how many of you people are in enterprise environment? Reasonable number of percentage, almost 60 to 70. So if you are doing automated build and stuff like that, we want to enable ease in doing that from within the deployment solution that we have. And the next thing that we want to talk about is get a sneak peek at what's cooking for DB deployment. So we are going to have DB deployment coming up in near future. It's not there available right now, but whatever we have right now is what we are going to try to show you. So pretty fresh off the ground. And with that, I'm going to get started. And the first thing that we are going to talk about today is what is the solution that we have for you today? What is the kind of life that we all are living? So this is the picture of web deployment story today. And assume that you have Visual Studio 2008 on your dev box, and you are trying to dev your web application. So when you try to develop a web application, what all do you try to do? You try to go ahead and prepare yourself to go to World Wide Web. You're trying to get your domain name registered, all those things figured out, right? Then you've got your certs, like security certs to get your HTTPS working, get your client authentication systems working, those kind of certificates. You've got a bunch of IIS settings, which you go inside the iNet Manager, try to customize your IIS for that. Then you've got web content, which is essentially your primary web project, which we keep referring to, like all the files which we consider in this category are all the ASPX pages, your user controls, custom controls, images, so on and so forth. Then you have your database also, right, in which you want to go ahead and deploy. Then you've got GAC assemblies. So many people have GAC assemblies which they try to use. You've got registry, which is many times used inside your web application. And many a times people use COM components, although we have tried to tell them since last 5 to 6 years that don't do that, but they still do that. Well, anyways, that was a joke. You still need to use COM components. Visual Studio also has COM components inside it. And then finally, you obviously want to make sure that your configuration changes from the dev environment to production environment before you go. Right? With all these things, do you think that there is something substantial that I'm missing? Anyone with raise of hands? No. Okay. So the solution that we have today, what I wanted to emphasize is that it does a great job. And to get your site to the server side, we've got solution for copy web and publish web. What copy web and publish web does for you, essentially, is it takes your web content and moves it on the other side. Now, on the other side is your IT admin or a hoster who gets these files and then essentially comes down running and says, dude, not everything is there. Things are not going to work. And then you come running, right? You come running by, try to save your site, then all you really do is that you decide, oh, let me get few more things. So you're going to go ahead and try to get your IIS settings, DB, stuff like that. Then you figure out, oh shit, what about that GAC component, that infogistic control that I need to get? So you essentially go running back again, trying to get your GAC and COM and stuff like that. Then you get those things back. And then after all these things, you feel that now I think I'm in a good state. And as soon as you do that, you realize that you get an error, right? And your deployment has failed, and now you're going to try to fix it. And even after trying to fix it, it doesn't get better. So what we want to do is to ease that pain. So that is our deployment story today. In VS 10, what we are hoping is that when VS 10 comes out, magically it appears in front of you, you grab a box, you install it, and then what it would do is that it would take your dev box, move it to server, get it up and running. So with show of hands, let me ask you, how many of you feel that this is possible? Really, like 5, 6, 7 people? Well, we are going to show that that is possible right here, right now in 5 minutes. So let's look forward to how this is going to happen. So what we are doing is that we have got this beautiful technology from our friends from IIS. It's called MS Deploy. And it's a technology which is the basis of our deployment story. And it creates something that is called as web package. That beautiful package that you see is your web. And it will be one day like that. So what it can do is that it can take your entire website and put inside the package. And then, eventually, that package can be moved to web forms. You can deploy that package to web forms. You can potentially go ahead and take that web package and back it up if you want to. You can version it, you can name it. Now, and then eventually you can also go ahead and give that package out to the community and let the community use that web package. Now, when I keep saying this web package, it almost seems that this is in a hypothetical world, right? But the web package that we are talking about is essentially a zip file or a folder which contains everything that your web needs to run. It will contain your DB scripts, it will contain your files, it will contain your settings. Everything that you need to run your application is going to go inside that package, and it's going to be zipped up. And with that, what I really want to go ahead and talk to you next is to try to show it, right? So let's try to see if that is really feasible. So for that, first what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to show you the server machine. So first, let me introduce my machines over here so that you can see the elaborate setup. This one is a super powerful server, and it's 3 years old now. But anyways, we've got Windows Server 2008 on it. I have got a dev box, which is supposed to be my dev box, and it keeps dying every now and then, so I have to keep it on. And the third box is the box of my QA, or my friend in my company. So we are going to try to role play over here, try to see how everything works. So we are right now on our server, and if you see, I have got the PDC site, which is a different site, and all that I have over here is blogengine.web. PDC site is at c:/PDC, and again, to refresh and confirm, it just has got that. Now, as you know, our previous solutions always used to just move files, right? It didn't used to move anything else but the files. Now, what I'm going to try to do is that I'm going to try to open VS onto my dev box, and for that, I'll have to switch to the dev box. Okay. So this is my dev box. What I have in front of me is my web pages starter kit. How many of you have heard of it? Beautiful. So that basically solves my motive, because I wanted to cheat and say that this is a site that is like the biggest site that you can find on the web. But it is indeed a very big site. The idea is to represent a very real world site to show you that We do not want to take a default website and try to deploy it because it's not really convincing. I know that you guys live in way more complicated world than just trying to deploy a default website, right? So this is a site with somewhere close to 1,300 pages, pretty complicated site. And I'm going to go ahead and try to run default.aspx just to make sure that the site is working, right? So the site is working. I've got login.aspx also present over here, and I can sign in. So I'm going to go ahead and try to sign in. So everything seems to be working on the site, and we are assuming that now it's time for it to go ahead and get deployed onto the server. So before I go ahead and deploy it onto the server, I'm going to go ahead to this site, and I'm going to try to change an IIS setting, and I'm going to basically say I want my default page to be login.aspx, right? So I did that, and the next thing that I want to do is to try to publish it, right? So we've got the new paradigm of publishing available with Visual Studio 2010, in which I can hit publish, and it takes a long time because it's going to do a great job. But essentially, the publish dialog comes up. This is a renewed publish dialog. Let us just quickly understand what all this dialog does. The dialog essentially has got the concept of profiles. So it can allow you to create different profiles. You would use this kind of scenario where I want to go to my QA box, I would have a different profile. I want to go to my server box, I'll have a different profile, so on and so forth. And it also allows me to choose a publish model. So a publish method, which is FTP, file system, or FPSE. Any of those I can choose. We would recommend that you use MS deploy publish because it is really powerful. It's going to give you that additional value which you would not get via FTP or something like that. So with that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and try to take MS deploy publish. This is the IP address of my box, which is what I was trying while some time back. So let me move back to the server and convince you that it is actually the same stuff. So here IP config. So notice that this is 2023.8.119. And moving back to my dev box, you will see that I've got the same one. And I'm going to say msdeploy.axd, and I'm going to say site is equal to PDC site, right? So site and application, we're going to try to deploy to PDC site, but I'm open to suggestions on what is the name that we should give to the application. Anyone has suggestions? No one has a suggestion? Cool Web. Okay. So Cool Web, and we will try to deploy it on CPDC site, Cool Web. Now, I have got permissions on this server to deploy the additional settings, which might require admin privileges. But at the same time, if you do not have admin privileges, there will still be a lot of value that we will be showing, and we'll be talking about that towards the end of the talk. And we can, of course, talk a lot more into what is allowed, what is not allowed, and stuff like that. Your server administrator is the person who can restrict what you would want to, what you will be allowed to deploy or not deploy. Now, the interesting piece over here is that in case your server does not allow you to publish the IIS settings, then you would not be able to do that. But when would you normally do that is when you would try to move this to a test box or a QA box, somewhere like that, where a QA would be able to test it. And then eventually from there, an IT admin would pick that web and move it across, right? So that particular scenario we'll talk about in a little bit. This is a scenario where you're trying to go to a server where you have permissions, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and try to publish the site. And I don't know whether you guys have ever seen the performance of various different places, but you will see that hopefully it should not take as long. And you will see that the site was published, right? What we will try to do is that we will go back to our server, right? And you got Cool Web right over here, right? Let us refresh. You got Cool Web right over here. So, and believe it or not, friends, that is a substantially large website. Means seriously, it is really a large website. We wanted to consciously make sure, see, it has got all different kinds of localization, stuff like that. Pretty big site. it got deployed in a flick of a second, right? Not really flick of a second, but at least in a minute. So one value add that you need to see over here is that your app was created, right? And now I'm going to try to browse to that same web over here on my box. So let me switch back to my box. So let us go ahead and try to browse. HTTP 1019, and we had cool web. So let us go ahead and try to see. So it's trying to connect to the box. Let's see how it goes. And my friends, you saw login.aspx. So it did not go to default.aspx. It went to login.aspx by default because the settings were transferred. So that, in essence, at a high level, is that you can take your IIS settings, your pages, flawlessly to a server within a click. But within a click means we were probably saying that it was 2 clicks, because here, first click, and here, second click, right? We wouldn't settle down for 2 clicks, so we basically made the one-click toolbar. So the one-click toolbar now allows you to pick the profiles that you created right over here. And now let us probably try to make a small little change. For instance, over here. What should I make a change? Let's say some change. And now if I try to just hit publish again, then you will notice that actually this is going to publish way faster than when I published last time, because what we do is that on the server side, we try to find out what are the diffs, what are the things that have changed, and only the changed things are pushed to the server. And so your next second time publish is going to be way more faster than what it is, right? So this is a scenario where we talked about how you can publish to a test environment or a QA environment, or potentially to a production server if your IT staff is not doing their right job, right? Yes?
What about updating the web.config database connection and all that? We just publish it from the web server to a test server. So we can talk about that later?
Yes, we will talk about that later. And honestly, if you have any questions, just keep them coming. If we fall, I'm hoping that we will probably keep catching pace. In case I stop you from asking, then assume that I will not be able to show everything that I want to. And so I'll probably block you, and just so that everyone gets to see everything that we have planned to talk about. Yes?
We saw you just deploy to a single server. Is it just as easy to deploy to multiple servers at one time?
Not exactly at one time, but it is possible. I'm not meaning to say that you create 20 profiles and publish to 20 servers. We'll talk about that in a little bit, just going forward. So, yes?
The question so that everyone...
Okay, yeah. The question was that whether it would be possible to deploy as easily to a web farm environment, and I said that we'll talk about that later. So going back again, I'm going to try to move back to our presentation. And the next thing that we want to talk about is that how does this whole thing happen, right? I want to go ahead and explain you that the philosophy behind everything, how does it work, so that you can capture and understand, and you'll probably get answers for the questions that you're asking already. So you have your dev box, we had that over here, and we had your project, which was talking to VS10. What VS10 did was that VS10 created a source manifest of your project. It basically said, your project has got IIS settings, your project has got web content, so on and so forth. In case there would be database, it would be over here. In case there would be GAC, those will be inside over here, all that kind of stuff. So the source manifest was created, which is again an MS deploy concept. And then we made a call to MS deploy. And then your project was passed across to MS deploy. Now what MS deploy does is that using this information, it creates a web package, which is a .zip file, which you can actually carry around anywhere that you want. And in a web farm scenario, MS deploy would be the right place, which would basically do the web farm stuff. And we have a talk coming tomorrow morning, where we would basically be able to get answers to that stuff. So, and I can share with you where that information is. But that's how a web package is created. Along with that, what we do is that we also go ahead and create destination manifest, which means that you saw that my source website's name was my web pages starter kit something something. But when we deployed, it became cool website, right? when I tried to deploy it to a physical location, which was C PDC site cool web, that was again a different value for the destination. So some of the values which are related to destination are different. So what we do is that we create a destination manifest for the destination purpose. And to add value onto it, what we also do is that we create a batch file which will be put onto your box, which you can go ahead and use to install that package anywhere you want to, which is what will be our next demo. We'll talk about that in a minute. But those are the three primary elements that VS produces: the source manifest, destination manifest, and the package install command. And then MS deploy uses the source manifest and produces the package. Now, when it comes to local deployment, which would be the scenario where you would create a package and give it to your admin, and he or she would want to go ahead and install it onto the servers manually, right? What would happen in that scenario? So in that scenario, we would basically tell you to take the package, take the destination manifest, and take the command file and give it to your admin. The admin would then, the command file has the reference to those two things. The admin would run the command. Command will use MS deploy, which means that the MS deploy needs to be present on the server. And then MS deploy will take that entire package and hydrate it into the server. Now, how it does it is it does it based on the destination manifest, and inside the package also there are a bunch of artifacts, which again we'll be talking a little bit more in the detail on the server-side infrastructure tomorrow. But it takes all the details from inside the package, knows where to put what things, and hydrates it into the IIS server. If there were databases connected behind the scenes, it would do that for databases too, right? So that's how on the local environment it works. What we saw was the remote environment, right? So for the remote environment, you have the remote server present, and the remote server has got, let's say we've got a cloud and has got IIS on the other side. So when we did that publish call, what actually happened was MS deploy made a call to IIS on the other side. IIS is WMSVC, and it basically tried to connect to that and authenticate using my credentials, which I gave. And if the authentication actually would have failed, then you would have got back error right inside Visual Studio at publish time, and you would be able to look at the error right over there that my credentials were not correct. But because my credentials passed, what actually happened was that on the server side, MS deploy was invoked, right? The package and the destination manifest was moved across. Only the right amount of content inside the package would be moved across when it comes to publish. And then the package would then be hydrated using MS deploy onto the IIS of the destination. So that's the overall flow on how different things work. Now, one important point to note over here is that package is actually a physical entity, right? It's a zip file which is created inside your obj/debug or release or whatever configuration that you're using. Inside that there would be a folder for package, and it would be stored right there. Now, if for every publish I was going to create a package and then use the package to go to the server, it would be just insanely costly, right? It means if you had a say 1 gig site, I would make a copy of 1 gig inside the package and then move it across again. So what we do is that we allow you to skip the package when it comes to publish. But at the same time, we allow you to create the package while publishing as well, because in case you want to publish to, say, GoDaddy or Discount ASP or any such hoster, and you want to find out what did I actually publish, and you want to keep a copy of it, then we would allow you to basically go ahead and save a copy while you publish, right? So that's how that overall stuff works. And the next thing that we are going to do is to get back into the demo and try to see how web packaging works. Right? We talked about how the publishing works, and now we're going to really go ahead and see how the package looks like. So back to my dev box. Again, to continue the tradition, we've got Graffiti site. Has any one of you not heard of Graffiti? 3 or 4, 5 people? How many of you have heard it? Where are which category do the rest of the people fall in?
Ask the question again.
But anyways, Graffiti is a hugely popular community site. Comes in approximately top 5 sites, which according to few of our hoster friends, they said that are deployed on their shared hosting environment. You download the site, it's really easy, really nice to work with. And I'm going to run the site to show you how it actually works, right? So it's a standard site. You can certainly customize it. What we'll do is that we'll try to customize it a tiny bit by adding some sections. So I'm going to go ahead and click login.aspx, admin. Can anyone guess the password? Perfect. We can change that too. They allow us to do that. So I'm going to log in. This is Graffiti, right? And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to create, now this is the way I'm going to go ahead and customize Graffiti. I'm going to try to create a new category. So I'm going to try to create a PDC rocks category. As you can see that I have tried that earlier, but okay. Okay, web deployment at PDC rocks. Save the category. The category is right in there. We could go ahead and edit a category if we want to. And actually a pretty good site if you want to go ahead and take a site, try to modify it, make your own app for your hosted environment and stuff like that. This is a pretty reasonable site. So we have Graffiti working. Right. What I'm going to go ahead and do is go back again to Graffiti over here. Let's do default.aspx is at the bottom. We're going to move that up. Now there are a bunch of things which you can really do. Like I just used that stereotypical example, but you could go ahead and try to change the authentication. Like you could disable anonymous, which is what is typically happening, right? On your own box, you allow anonymous authentication. When you try to go to the hoster environment or anywhere else, you try to make sure that it's either Forms or Windows and stuff like that. So you could do any of those things. I'm going to save it in this way just for a specific reason, which we will get to in a minute. But you could, the meta point is that IIS settings, whatever you want to change, you can. Let us take the default. Where did it go? Oh, here. So default.aspx, we'll try to push it up, right? And go back to Graffiti. Now what I want to do is that I want to create a web package. Now earlier we saw publish. The way you would go ahead and create a web package would be right click and just say create package, right? And with this, the package is being created. Package is created already. Right? Now what we want to do is to basically try to take this package and move it to a different box. Right? So in a typical scenario, let us assume I'm trying to give this to my friend. So to do that, what I'm going to try to ask, let us basically see this. So I was in the debug mode. You can basically see that the package is created. And I'm going to try to show you those 2 or 3 different files which we talked about. So this is the source manifest that we generated, right? It looks like this. I basically am picking up app host config, which is an IIS setting, and I'm picking up the content, which is basically my content path. And then we have the destination manifest, in which I have some destination settings set by default, and the destination settings are like _deploy, right? So let's do that, and then finally the command file, which is a pretty complicated command file, but it's not really complicated. It just encapsulates MS-deploy command in a very easier fashion because it has got a lot of options and comments. That's why it is that big, but really it's just 2 or 3 lines of code. And this is where your zip file is. This is how your package looks like. The content inside the package is all these archive parameters and stuff like that. All these XMLs are essentially telling MS-deploy how to unzip the package or basically how to consume the package, right? So there is metadata information. Much more about that is going to be talked about tomorrow when we get into the guts of MS-deploy. And Saad, my friend, is he over here somewhere? Yeah, Saad over there is going to talk about that in great more detail tomorrow. But for our conversation, we got a zip file, right? Now we want to move ahead and take this zip file and install it on a different box, right? So for that, what I want to do is that I want actually a USB drive. Does anyone has a USB drive? No, really. And you can then take, yeah, thank you. Okay. And then you can use that package when you go in VS 2000, so the CTP DVD that is available actually has all these bits. So you can take this and install it, Just don't tell graffiti guys that I gave, but I think that they share it publicly anyway, so yeah. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay. So I'm guessing you're Glenn? Okay, Glenn. So this is graffiti package. Let's open it and let's pick the right files from here. This, and this. Sweet. Ready? Make sure that Glenn's drive remains safe. So I'm safely removing it. It's removed. Okay. So now this is the second box. We are going to go to that one, and that is F. Okay. Monitor going to sleep. Oh. Okay, I think we've got some UI related issues, monitor related issues there. Give me a second. Okay. I'm guessing the installation would be probably faster than all these things, but that's my original box. Oh, the machine is starting. Beautiful. Too bad. Well, we can try to go ahead and install the same thing on this box. And I would imagine that you would trust me that we can install it on the other box as well. And if it starts, then before the end, if we have time, then I'll install it on that box as well. So, trying to get Glen drive back. Going to graffiti package. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to start the administrator command prompt and navigate to where MS deploy is. So I'm going to go to program files, IIS, Microsoft Web Deploy. Now to this, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and take these graffiti package folder from here and try to copy onto my local box. And I don't think so that I have anything like that over here. So, okay, so graffiti package got copied surprisingly really fast. And now what I'm going to try to do is to go down over here and try to go to this command file. So it is graffiti.command. I'm going to try to do a /t. Now /t in that command, what it is going to do is that it is going to try to run MS deploy in a what if mode. And what that means is that before installing, it's going to tell me what all it is going to change. Now the reason why that is so crucial is because when you give a zip file to your server admin and you tell him go and run it, he's not going to do that till he is basically going to check whether the package is containing the right thing, is not going to blast out things and stuff like that. So with that /t, if I run, then it's going to try to install it in a what if mode. It's basically saying it's going to change all these different items that I have, right? basically gave me an idea of what it is going to do. It's going to try to create a default website slash graffiti deploy package, and the site application name would be graffiti underscore deploy, so on and so forth. So we're not going to try to analyze all of what this is, but when you get chance, and Glenn will certainly get when he tries to try the VPC, right? And then what I would do is that I'll try to go ahead and run the thing in the final mode, which is /y, right? So I do a /y. It's actually installing all these things onto my box. And it said that 684 files changed. Now if I go back to my iNet manager, and if I refresh, you will see a graffiti deploy present, and I can go ahead and try to browse to that graffiti deploy location. And it's prepping up for the first time, but let us try to go ahead and see what my admin screen looks like. Admin, you can see it didn't fill up the password because this is the first time we are accessing the site. And I'm not remember the password this time. Okay, so we are in. Let us look at the categories. And let's see, PDC rocks, right? So it's that simple to go ahead and try to deploy something. Yes? No, you have to call it that. The question is that what if he doesn't want to call the site graffiti underscore deploy? But then you're deploying. Why would you want to not call it underscore deploy? We have a solution for that, dude. Means, of course, you will not want to name it that, and we are going to look at that in a minute. So you are almost leading me to the next point that we want to talk about. So what we saw is that we are able to create a package, we are able to publish it seamlessly, right? Now we are going to talk about customizing it. Like, how am I going to go ahead and try to customize all these pieces, right? So let's go back to our slides. And the next thing is, yes, Glenn. Oh, yeah, please. Here. It has got graffiti.
Thank you kindly.
Okay. Has anyone over here used graffiti really, or? Okay, great, great. So what the new concept over here to know about is web publishing pipeline. It is basically the backbone of our entire deployment architecture. And what this is that it is a MS Build based system which will allow you to go ahead and customize and change and do whatever else you want, whatever you can dream of with that entire process. Because what we do is that it's completely MS Build based, so you can change it from team build. If you want to go ahead and try to do continuous integration, then you can call even publish from MS Build. So you can imagine that on a nightly basis, you can go ahead and create a package. You can take that package, you can install it onto a location. Next day morning, your QA comes in, never able to tell you that dev is making me blocked. Because next day morning, they will have the stuff right there. So that, and I do not know of any other technology which can even allow you to publish in this fashion. Means there are thousands of client UIs like Smart FTP, Qt FTP, and Sweet FTP and Sugar FTP, but none of them can be done on a nightly basis on a command line unless until you choose to write a big program around it. So now you will get all that stuff for free. And the web publishing pipeline basically is broken down into 3 primary sections: collection, transformation, and output. So collection, what we do is that we essentially start taking all of your files and start putting it into an in-memory list. We try to find out what are the files you really require. We put them into an in-memory list, and that whole process is called collection. Now, if you want to collect a bunch of things, you can plug it inside, and you can collect things from UNC drives, whatever else you want to do. So that's collection phase. Transformation, that goes down to the point as to when you have your application on your dev box, right? At that time, it looks much different than what it is supposed to look like on the production box. You need to change your web config files. You need to possibly exclude a bunch of files that you might have CRUD files. You might have a test.aspx trying to test your web services. You don't want that on production. Let's say you want to exclude those files. You might want to go ahead and pre-compile your application so that the first time it gets deployed, it will be much faster, things like that. So all that is transformation. The next thing is output, where we basically are able to take the output of the transform web, put it either on FTP, file system, or MS deploy. So with that, let's get into a little bit tiny more details around this. Web publishing pipeline completely depends upon build. Most of these items that you're going to see on these slides are all MS build tasks and targets, which you can go ahead and customize also if you want to. The next thing is collecting output binaries and PDBs. So we basically collect all your output binaries, PDBs. We collect references of your project, right? We go ahead and collect all of your content finally, which is marked as content. And then we go ahead and do transformation of web config. We go ahead and exclude files, do precompile, do merge, and then output to either FTP, file system, MS deploy, or HTTP. Now this is a critical point to note, because what is really happening is that if you choose to go with FTP or file system, this is all that you can get. But if you choose to go with MS deploy, then you can package your GAG, COM, registry. You can package your IIS settings. You can package your security certificates. You can package your database. You can individually put in extra scripts if you want to, right? And then after doing all that stuff, we would create the source manifest, which will have all that items inside it, right? And then finally, MS deploy will be called, which will create a package, right? Which we will give to Glenn. Or otherwise, we could go ahead and publish like the way we did with Cool Web, right? So that is how the entire web publishing pipeline works. And without any further delay, what we will do is that we will go ahead and try to look at the demo. The previous one, the one-click publish that you saw, is not right now in the CTP bits, but the packaging is in the CTP bits. So you can actually try this when you get the CTP bits. So with that, let me go ahead and try to move back to my site. And that is, I'm so confused. Okay. So going back to this, let us go ahead and try to open our Graffiti application and try to see how we can possibly customize all the package creation, right? Okay. So let us go to the properties of Graffiti. So in the properties of Graffiti, what you will notice is that we have got new tab called Publish. Now, the advantage of this is that this is not embedded inside your web. This is embedded inside Visual Studio. So even your older webs, when they move to Visual Studio 10, will automatically get a Publish tab, right? So let's go to the Publish tab, try to understand what all it has. So the Publish tab is essentially all configuration driven. So this is debug, release. If you want to create a new configuration, you can create a new configuration, and that would still be okay. And it has one additional feature, which is where we will tie back to the point where we said that we can share our packages with the community or with your peers, right? So this particular option, which is disabled right now, is not yet implemented, but when it will be, what it says is that it has only files needed to run your application, which means that when we talk about only files needed to run your application, we just need your DLLs, we need your ASPX pages, right? And we probably need any other references that you've got, right? Other than that, I don't really need your code behinds, right? I don't need those to run your application or all your CS files and stuff like that. So what we do is that when you choose that option, we optimize and just take those files, put them inside the package. But the other options that will be over here is everything that is included in your project, which will mean that you can take all your source code and put it inside the zip. And look at the power of all these things is that you could create this package just from your Office box, take the latest state of your entire stuff, go to your home, right? Unzip the package inside your home, and start working back again, right? Pretty powerful scenario where you can actually move everything in a USB drive around, right? So that's packaging the sources. You can potentially imagine that with this, if you are an ISV or if you are someone like Graffiti and people like that, you could create these packages and you can put them on the web, right? So that people can just go ahead and download it. And eventually, if we have a great ecosystem, then you can potentially create a new blog application. You think it rocks. You publish it onto a web in a common location. Anyone can download it, go up and running in no time. So pretty powerful stuff. Then the next thing is exclude app data. So you might want to potentially not push your app data files. People usually want to take their SQL Express version on their dev box and convert it into SQL 2005, 2008 on the server. So app data sometimes is not useful. Exclude generated debug symbols. This is just going to exclude the debug symbols which are already generated. And this is important to note because many times you should have debug symbols generated when you build. Because if you want to eventually go ahead and you get a bug on the production server, you want to go ahead and debug it. At that time, it would be very useful in case you have those PDBs, right? But that doesn't mean that you put those PDBs on the server, right? So that particular option essentially allows you to have the PDBs generated but not necessarily include inside your package, right? Which you can include also if you choose to. ACLs is another scenario which you can basically, when you're sharing an app in between two boxes, you might have ACLs like ASP.NET user or INET user or IIS user or many other ACLs that you might have that you might want to move from box to box. So that is the option where you could do that. The IIS setting checkbox is a meta checkbox which takes all IIS settings related to your application. But apart from that, there are other spatial settings which you can yourself personally choose, like app pool. If you want to package a separate app pool with your application, you could do that. Certificates which are associated with your site, you can package them too. Framework config also can be packaged. Rarely used, but it's still available because when you package all these things, what you would probably need to know is that your destination server is going to get all these items, right? So you need to be very careful when you pick and choose such things. Like if you're going to change the machine config or something like that, if you're going to package it, then your application is going to change those things. This is the classic reason why we have the /t flag on the command line. Like if you go ahead and package these things, then your server admin should look at it and suddenly say, no, you cannot do this, right? But that's where that is useful. And then finally, this is the place where my friend was asking that why would we always name it _deploy? Where you could name it whatever you want to over here and wherever you want to put it, right? So that's where you basically change the names, change the physical paths. This is where you decide whether you want the package to be created as a zip file or as a folder. So if you basically choose it as a folder, then it would get created as a folder. Yes? When you deploy it, yeah, certainly when you deploy it, we already gave the cool web name, right? When he gave? Sure. No, that's what I'm saying. If you basically go ahead and change this name over here, and if you hit package again, then the package will have a different name. Now, if you want to have the package, and then at the package install time you want to change it, that's why you basically had the destination manifest, right? This value went in over here. So when you are trying to deploy, you would basically go ahead and change this XML, and then deploy it. Then the name inside this XML will be taken while deploying. Can do that, can also pass in command line value if he wants to. Right. So there will be a, yes?
So we're deploying to a web farm. Sure, I have to use the microphone. So we're deploying to a web farm, and in the web processing pipeline, we want to be able to encrypt our web config when we're transforming the web config using the RSA encryption provider. How are you going to make that easy here? Because that's too hard today.
Next leading question, amazing. Let's go to the deck again, and we will talk about web config transformation next. So I'll probably have to speed up a little bit because we have 15 more minutes, and I want to spend at least 15 minutes on this, and then if you guys have more time, we're going to talk about DB2. So web config transformation, we had a bunch of asks from people, make it really simple, don't make us do a lot of complicated things, easy as possible. We told that don't duplicate the web config if I don't want to. Means if I have this huge web config, if I change it at one place, I have to change it at 15 places. Not good, but if possible, if I do want to change it, if you do want to replicate it, then of course you will be allowed to. We'll see that also. Honor build configurations, which means that we will be honor build configuration is like debug, release, and stuff like that, right? Make it powerful, which means that we would want to do complicated things like XPath, change smallest attribute as possible, do things like that. So that's making it powerful. Make it extensible, so we know that as Microsoft, we cannot find everything, all the problems in our own place, and we cannot solve them all. So we want to give you an opportunity to extend it and make it customizable, which means that web config is an XML, so don't do something very specific to web config. Make something very specific to XML so that we can potentially change our own config, our own XMLs to do a bunch of things, right? So that's make it extensible. So with that, we have web.debug.config, web.release.config, web.staging.config. So that's the model that we are going to have. Let's next really quickly look at how this actually works, right? So you've got web config in your web project. Now you've got web.staging.config. We have got XML transformation engine, which takes these two files and goes ahead and emits a web config file, right? The next thing, some of the concepts which are worth noting over here is that when you have this transformation happening, at that time, we have a concept called transform. And it looks like that encircled one. XDT:transform replace. As simple syntax as that. And that will replace that particular section. So the reason why it is shown under web.staging.config is that is where you will be placing that code, right? And it will basically go ahead and replace your connection string with that particular value. But now, you might not necessarily just blanketly want to do that. So that is the reason we have got something which is called as a locator, which allows you to control how the transform works, right? So the transform actually goes ahead and changes things. Locator goes ahead and tries to find the pieces that you really want to modify. So it's basically an XPath-based thing that we have made, and it has got simple syntax like XDT:locator match on name. So in this situation, it will match on block DB, and only the block DB will be replaced, right? So with that, what I want to do is go ahead and show you the demo. I think this would be exciting if this machine doesn't cheat us. So, is it Vista Enterprise? Yeah. I'm guessing this is starting for the first time. So I'm going to go back to the slide and try to save some time by doing some more of the stuff that we talked about. So over here, what I wanted to quickly touch base on is one of the questions that keeps coming is that why did we not use XSLT, right? Because this is a classic example of a transform which is called as insert. And you can see that bold letters in white below. That is the only syntax that you really need to do to add an app setting when you go to production. Versus if you were to do that in XSLT, you would have to write all that jazzy, complicated logic. So with that, I still want to go back and show you a bunch of things. I'm going to try to move to that box. So it's up and running now. This is going to be fun because you're going to see me walking around from one place to another to get, oh, good. Okay. So let's get this application started really quick. We'll kick up one more Visual Studio. Okay, perfect. So I've taken one another site called blogengine.net, and what I'm going to try to do is to go to properties. Now this is where I'm going to try to show you a bunch of web config stuff, so I'm glad that this did came up. And again, web config transformation is supported via MS Build, so you can go ahead and do the transformation from MS Build as well. So what I'm going to first do is that I'm going to go to the configuration manager, and I'm going to try to create a new config. And let's say that we are going to call that as staging. And I'm going to get the settings from release. So let's do that. Okay. So in this thing, now what I'm going to try is that inside my web config, I of course do have web.debug.config and web.release.config, which I'll get as soon as I create any new application in Visual Studio. So you get that for free. But in case you add new configurations, you can right click on web config and say add config transforms. And it is going to go ahead and try to create a staging configuration for my box. So there you can see that web.staging.config was added. Simple way, it will not try to override any of your existing transforms, so it will just add the ones which are different and missing, right? So in this scenario, let us probably try to look at the web config file for the blog engine. You can see that it is pretty complicated web config file. I'm going to take this entire section. I'm going to go into the debug, paste it right over here, and what I'll do is that I'll change this to, let's say, PDC 2008, right? Now what I want to do, did I paste it in debug? Yeah, okay. So I pasted it in debug, so I'm going to go back to the debug config, debug environment, and I'm going to go ahead and hit create package. Now I will be able to do that from command line just by doing ms build project name / target transform web config. You'd be able to do that too. But right now what it is doing is that it's trying to create a package and give an error. Oh, yeah. So it gave an error because there was no transform present. So what I need to do now is that I want to go ahead and add a transform. So I'm going to go and try to add a transform, which will be something like xdt:transform replace, right? So now this transform should ideally go ahead and replace my existing web config file with this new web config file, right? It is essentially saying that this configuration node is what is actually getting replaced, right? That is, the transform actually applies to the node on which I'm applying it. So I could go ahead, right click and say package, create package again. Some file actually did get deleted. Let us do that same exercise in a different web config. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take the web config file of this application and try to do the same thing with that file, right? So I have this web.debug.config, paste it, okay. Now try to change something over here. So what we would probably want to change is a scenario like, let's pick up one item that we really want to go ahead and change. Let's say we want to say debug is equal to false, right? Now if I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm in a debug mode, so I'll go ahead and try to say package, create package. So the publish succeeded. Now if I go and try to look at my obj/debug directory, then inside this I have my new web config file. And if I go back to that web config file and look at the compilation section, then the debug was set to true, the one which I just changed, right? So that it is that simple to go ahead and change that. But it is not just those things that you really want to change. You want to go ahead and change a lot more things than just that. So what we will try to do is that we will try to take few more complicated examples of what all you would want to do. So in the web config file, I'm going to try to add sections over here, like app settings, right? And add name, key is equal to key 1, value is equal to value 1. Now in this scenario, when I want to go ahead and change, then what I would be able to do is to take this entire, just this particular section and not everything else. So I'm going to try to remove all of these pieces over here, make it really simple and empty, right? And replace it with just this piece. So you're not going to repeat yourself completely, just the portion which you really care about. Key 1, and instead of this value, now I'm going to say xdt:transform, and I can go ahead and say replace, but here I can go ahead and say match, sorry, xdt:locator. I'm going to try to match it on the key, right? So this will, what this will do is that only if this particular thing matches, I'll probably try to explain you a lot because we are nearly out of time. So I'm going to try to explain you a lot of these functionalities, and most of this works really awesome. So if what this will do is that this will match on the key, and then only it would replace, right? The other example, other things which are very relevant are things like where you want to do bunch of different kind of transforms, and I'm going to try to open those. So this is a scenario where you would want to put on the compilation tag, and you're trying to remove an attribute called debug. Now you will notice that I am not trying to put that particular attribute on the compilation tag over here, because the transform doesn't require you to repeat yourself. All it really requires is that you are putting it inside this particular node, and you're telling it that please remove the attribute called debug. And it would go ahead, and when it produces the final config, the debug attribute will be removed. The other thing that you can do are things like match and replace, which we just now saw, right? So the other thing that you could do is set attributes. So set attributes is a transform which will allow you to set whatever attributes that you mention over here. So now the timeout is mentioned over here. In case there were cookieless mentioned over here, then it would set cookieless too. If you mention something else, then it will set all of it. Now if you want to just set one attribute, then you can go ahead and do something like timeout, and it would just set the timeout attribute. And if you want to set more than that, then you can go ahead and say comma cookieless, and it would go ahead and do 2. So if you have bunch of attributes over there, and if you just want to pick and choose which one to apply, then you can do something like that with set attributes, right? So that is what set attributes does. The next thing that we will see is insert. So what transform insert will do is that it will insert that particular section at the bottom of your app settings. So this particular thing will go ahead and insert it at the bottom of your app settings in PDC version. So if you had a bunch of things already present inside the app settings, then insert would essentially take it at the bottom. Is this seemingly convincing? Are you able to follow? Okay, let me take the question over there, then we'll come back.
Is there a transform to encrypt the node?
No, we do not encrypt the node, because then we were asked this question, but if we would have encrypted the node, what would essentially happen is that people will know what the encryption is, right? Eventually, means usually you want to have your own private key, own public key combinations to create the encryption. What we do is that you can put an encrypted text over here after encrypting, right? So you can encrypt it outside using your own key, put the text over here, and then when the transformation happens, then automatically that will be taken care of. So that's that. The other question that you had?
Speaking for a few folks.
Say that again?
Automating the process of, here we're publishing a package to deploy a web application.
Right.
And connection strings contain the crown jewels accessing our databases. We need to encrypt that, and we'd like you to think about automating that for us as well. ASP Reg IIS is cumbersome.
Okay. Okay. So we will take that feedback, and we will look into it more. Okay. Okay. Very loud and clear. We'll look into that. Then the next, so we looked at the insert transform. The next thing that we saw match and replace too. I unfortunately blew up a site which is not mine, so I cannot fix it. That PDB file and stuff, I cannot fix that site. But I think that this will still be a very good representative example of what it would do. So this particular thing, what it shows is that I have got an option of doing set attributes, and I have got a locator called condition. So a condition locator, what condition locator will do is that you can actually pass XPath based conditions right over here like this. So this is the reason I say it's powerful, because let us look at this provider, sitemap provider section inside the original web config. So you'll probably get a gauge of what it is. Okay, so this particular section, you can see that I have got providers, page site name, description, and type. And what I'm probably trying to do over here, let's go back to our web.release.config, where I'm trying to say that I want to take a locator called, use the condition of mapping the, if the name is equal to this, and the sitemap file is web.sitemap, then go ahead and set the attribute for description. So you can do complicated XPaths inside the web config transform in this fashion. And then let's look at the next one. Okay, so that, and apart from that, what is also interesting to note is that the web config transformation is also not only supported at the top web.config file, but it is also supported at a web config which is inside a subfolder. So you can see that inside a subfolder also, I have the web config file. I can add a config transform, like the staging transform, it gets added over there. And you can write your transforms per web config, as many number of web configs that you have, all of them will support this feature. And then finally, going ahead and showing you a few of the things which is possible is things like insert before, remove. So you've got a transform which can remove a particular node, very common in case of authorization scenarios, right? And you can basically go ahead and insert before or insert after if you choose to, which is also very useful when you want to do authorization scenarios where you allow, deny a set of users, and you want to make sure that when something is inserted, it's inserted at the right place, right? So that's insert before, insert after. And finally, one of the most powerful pieces is actually an XPath. So you can see that here, I'm not even following the structure of web config file. It's just configuration and deny. Deny doesn't exist under configuration. You can take whatever structure that you want, and you can put whatever transform that you want. We have a spatial locator called XPath, and in that XPath, you can actually provide the exact XPath of that particular node that you want to, and then the transform will apply to that exact XPath. So, which means that if you have 5 transforms that you want to apply, you can just list down whatever those 5 nodes you want to change, and just do XPath for each one of those, so that your file also can be really compressed. So, in essence, there are a lot of powerful things. So really switching back quickly and trying to close on that is that we saw all these different transform. We saw there is replace, there is remove all, which can remove everything that is found, insert, set attribute, remove attribute, insert before, and insert after, right? Well, you'll get this slide, you can read more about it, but all of these will be available. These are all available in the VPC as well. Then locators, we've got 3 locators available. Match, which is going to match on the attributes which are comma separated values. We've got condition, which is basically @ name XPath condition, and an actual XPath where you can, an actual XPath where you can provide whatever XPath that you want to. So that is a pretty awesome feature. I mean, it's really, a lot of people have loved that, whoever had tried working on that. So with that, we'll switch forward and take a sneak peek of DB deployment, but I want to stop because we are out of time. I want to go ahead and thank you all for coming down, and in case anyone does want to leave, then we are totally respectful of your time. I'll still go ahead and show DB deployment if there are enough people interested. Are people interested? Show of hands. Awesome, okay.
Come on.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Does this work for themes? In other words, does it copy prior to the ASP.NET precompile, or does it happen post?
At this time, the precompilation is not implemented, but which particular thing were you talking about?
Currently, we have a challenge for deploying out-of-source control. The web config that has to be in place has to have the theme named. In other words, to get a good ASP.NET precompile.
Yeah.
So if you don't hijack the file or implement the versioning to the one you want, you're, hosed. So we'd really like to see a feature where, this transformation would happen prior to the ASP.NET precompile for deployment.
You can do that. We will have to talk about whether we should support it out of box or it would be like small switch that you can use to make that change. But let us follow up offline on that.
I have another question. So it wasn't clear to me that when you deploy the package to an existing installation, do these transformations apply to the web.config which is already there, or do you obliterate that web.config and then apply the transformations to the new web.config?
So your project's original web config is never modified so that you don't get anything changed inside Visual Studio. When you deploy on the destination, web config is just another file inside the package. So if that web config file is different than what is on the destination, then it will get replaced.
Is there any plan to not do that? Basically, here's the scenario. Like if you deploy this to a production system, the production system might have different ASP.NET impersonation setup. Those credentials will not be available to the developer, and we don't want to expose those to the developer who's providing the package.
So yeah, that particular scenario is certainly supported. So
how would
you can create a different configuration from your team build environment, and you can have web.secret.config, and you can create a secret stuff which is not accessible to any developer. So it's not necessarily needed to be done from a dev box. It can be done from a team build environment to produce it.
It's not just that. What we would like to see is the ability to not obliterate the web.config on the customer system, because there could be settings that we don't even know what they are.
Then why would you do the transform?
The transform, basically, we want to deploy our web application. So if the customer doesn't already have an instance of that web application,
yeah, sure.
Then we want to create a web.config, otherwise the application won't run.
Yeah, so you can certainly do that. You can turn off the transform. If you are creating for a particular website, which let's say your customer is customer 1, you can create customer 1 configuration, and you can have web.customer1.config. And
we don't know who the customers are going to be.
No, I'm just saying hypothetically, one config, which you will have no transform. It will never change web config. So
yeah, this is the
sure. So let
scenario.
us touch base later, because I want to finish the DB and make sure that everyone gets to see it, and then we'll probably go ahead and talk more. So in the properties, you saw that there was a publish SQL tab. So here is how the publish SQL tab looks like. What it has is that it is right now empty. I have not added any data connection, but usually what you will do is that you will add a data connection, which will be, you can name something, like for instance, I would name this as Contoso connection, right? Which is at a higher level, it is a connection. So this description, I might basically say, I want this to be updated, or this is updated up to, say, March, right? This is up to date for March, something like that, right? So then what I have options is that I can go ahead and say automatically script database, and when I select that, then I have an option of providing the source connection string of my database, whichever my home database is. So I will, if I have my Contoso connection string on my dev box, so I will basically say dev Contoso string. Then I have an option of doing schema only, or the complete database, which can take the schema as well as data and package it. And then I have spatial option of doing schema qualify, which would basically do DB or dot kind of things on your scripts. And that particular script gets generated and is added over here, right? Now what you see over here is that this particular, the reason why you have this additional box over here is that, so let me close this. This particular thing is simple to understand. Because I've automatically scripted the database, I have that over here. But if apart from the automatic scripting, you want to go ahead and add your own SQL files, then you can certainly go ahead and add them as well. So that's when you would basically click that, and you would have to provide the script path. What we would usually do is that we would show you the script, the file add dialog box, but right now we are just working on this, so bear with us on that. I can basically go ahead to C:temp, where I have, let's say we have some SQL file residing at some particular location. So I'm going to try to find SQL files. So I have few SQL files that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and try to take the path of this file. You can see that I have got files which are named as January 08 up, January 08 down, then I have got February 08 up, February 08 down, March up, March down. Now this is, people use this kind of things for agile based development where they try to deploy every monthly. So they try to create SQL scripts which are from January to February, they do a SQL script to add that. Then this way they basically do it for Feb, March, April, so on and so forth, right? So they can do as many scripts as they want. What we can do is that we can go ahead and add all of those scripts in over here, right? And then I can go ahead and choose. So let's say janup.sql, right? And add more scripts. So something like jandown.sql. I'm just going to show a few more, but so this is febup.sql. And this is a good practice to learn also in your general working, because honestly it's a very good way of dealing with your roll ups and roll downs if you have these kind of scripts. So let's say we are doing this till March. So I'm basically going to say march up.sql and march down.sql, right? So now if I am, right now my server, let's say, is in January stage, then what I could do is that I can uncheck the January up, because I don't need January, I'm already in January. I don't need January down, but I need February up and I need March up. So I would do this. And then when you create a package, then only those SQL files will be put inside the package and only those files will run on the server. Now, if you are already on the March version of your database and you want to go back down, then obviously you can just turn up and down whatever way you want to. You just create a new package, name it like a March package or a January package or however way you want to. The package will then contain the right scripts. Now also, it is possible for many people say that they try to create SQL scripts using team data, like the data dude or Redgate or stuff like that. Right? So those are the diff scripts you create. You may not necessarily need to have all these files. You might just have one, right? Or you might have n number, as much as you want. Also, sometimes if you have team data dude scenario which you're trying to use, then they try to produce SQL files every night in their team build environment using SQL data dude. Now in that situation, we also support taking a dynamically generated SQL file and injecting it inside. So that also is possible via command line, where you could basically go ahead and say external SQL files, and you can provide a list, and you can basically put those files inside also. So that's, in essence, how the entire thing works. And transactional, right now, every SQL script runs under its own transaction. But means, is that something which is a big problem, you think? No?
So it seems like you have to be really careful with this, how you deploy this, how you roll up your changes.
Yeah, means it.
Copy data or
Yeah.
I see there's an option to copy over data, but
Yes, so that is, yeah, certainly at that time you should basically have this unchecked. This should not be part of, and this will disappear. This should not be part of it.
how does it deal with errors?
So if it is inside the script, then it is transactional, so it will roll back. No, this will be more, if it is during publish time, if you're using publish to do it, then yes, it will come back. It will not show up on the screen. It will be in the VS error pages. If you're doing it using packages, then the package is just independent entity. You're going to take it wherever you want to using the zip file, right?
So let's say you add a column, they're not in all columns, and you don't provide a default. Where will that exception appear in Visual Studio?
So the exception will be caught by MS deploy, right? MS deploy would basically send it back that packaging failed or deployment failed. We rolled back because of blah 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 reason. That error, whatever error comes from MS deploy, is channeled right into your error window. So that's where you would basically see the error. Now, how much detail we will get the error? We'll try to get as detailed as possible, but that's a very fair scenario what you just called out. Yes.
Are the deploys themselves transactional? Like, let's say I'm trying to deploy using MS deploy to server X. Midway through deploy, either disk space runs out or there's a problem with the package file or something like that. Does the deploy itself, is it intelligent enough to roll back to its existing good state?
No, it does not. But at the same time, what is possible is that if you have a package created for your previous good state, it's just a matter of deploying that package again. So if you have a package which was your good state package, right, and you can create the good state packages very easily. So if you had a good state package, you just apply that package and your site will again be up and running.
Okay. Are setting migrations IIS 7 and above only?
Say that again.
Are the setting migrations IIS 7 and above only?
No, the settings migration will work for IIS 5.1, 6, as well as 7, which is XP and beyond, XP and above. But let me call this out that if you do one-click publish, then we have just 5 minutes, I just want to call. If we are going to do one-click publish, then in that case, the server side is an IIS 7 based server side because it listens, right? It's that authentication and all that stuff which happens. All that good stuff cannot be retrofitted into IIS 6. So if you're doing one-click publish, then you would have to use IIS 7 on the other end. But packaging any IIS version is just great.
Okay. Last question for me. Does the SQL stuff work with non-MS databases like Oracle?
So currently MS Deploy, we are supporting only SQL. But in the future plans, there is no promises. We are basically trying to find out if there is any way by which someone can create their own SQL stuff and plug in. Sorry, Oracle stuff and plug in. But there are no plans yet. Right now it is just SQL. Eventually it will be extensible.
Do you run stored procedures as part of the publishing process? So if my project includes a number of stored procedures, are they running as part of their publishing process as well?
You can run stored procs as part of publishing process. And I can touch base with you on your concrete scenarios. We are working on this right now. So if there is a gap in our scenario, then we can certainly talk about it a little bit.
When we can talk about it?
Now, just after this.
So one real quick one, just to confirm, you'd said that currently in the CTP, the ASP.NET precompile is not included as part of the pipeline?
So precompile and merge is not included.
Okay.
We do not know whether it will be immediately supported as well. But the pipeline extensibility is completely supported. Which means
that we could plug in our own.
Which means that you can plug in. It's a call to an ASP.NET merge or a precompile exe, right?
That
Should not
takes care of that question.
No, it's through MS Build. Right. MS Build based extensibility.
Right. So we had a big laundry list at the beginning of this of items that are installable through the packaging mechanism, and you had GAC and certs and all these kind of things. One thing I didn't see up there is certain kinds of .NET components that currently use like custom installers for. I'm thinking specifically of things like performance counters and event sources, where currently on a deployment we'd have to run install util in order to get them in and running on production servers. Are those sort of things something that would also be covered by the packaging?
It can. Again, it's an extensibility question.
Okay.
I think we are running out of time. But I am available right outside, and we can gather and talk as much as we want.
Great.
But thank you so much, everyone.